Here is the most efficient shape in the plane. For any given area, a circle encloses it with less perimeter than any other shape. Nothing beats it. So copy it. Cover a surface with equal circles, packed as tightly as they will go, and you get gaps. Just over 9% of the surface, wasted. A beehive cannot afford that. Wax is expensive, and every gap is wax spent on nothing. So the hive uses these instead. Not circles, not squares, not triangles, hexagons. People noticed this about 2,000 years ago. Proving that the hexagon really is the best way to divide a surface took until 1999. And in 3 dimensions, we still cannot do it. The circle's advantage has a name, the isoperimetric inequality. For any closed curve in the plane, the perimeter L and the enclosed area A satisfy L squared is at least 4 pi A. Equality holds only for the circle. That is the precise sense in which the circle is the best shape there is. You can watch it happen. Take a regular polygon holding a fixed area and add sides. 3 sides, perimeter 4.559. 4 sides, exactly 4. 6 sides, 3.722. Keep going and the perimeter slides down toward 3.545. That number is 2 times the square root of pi, the circle. But we are not choosing one shape, we are dividing a whole surface into equal pieces, and equal circles always leave gaps between them. So the question changes. Among all the ways to divide a surface into equal areas with no gaps, which one costs the least wall? And there is one thing we have to get right before we can compare anything. In a real partition, neighbouring cells share their walls. 1 wall, 2 cells. If you add up each cell's perimeter separately, you count every wall twice, and every comparison you make is wrong by a factor of 2. Start with the easy version of the question. Which regular polygons tile the plane at all? Go to a corner where several cells meet. The angles there have to add up to exactly 360 degrees, no more, no less. Equilateral triangles have 60-degree corners. 6 of them close the circle exactly. Squares have 90-degree corners. 4 fit. Regular pentagons have 108-degree corners. 3 of them give 324, and you are left staring at a 36-degree wedge of nothing. Regular pentagons do not tile. Regular hexagons have 120-degree corners. 3 fit exactly, and beyond 6 sides, every corner is wider than 120 degrees, so 3 of them already overshoot. The list is over. Triangle, square, hexagon. Those are all of them. Now give them all the same area and measure the wall. Triangles, 4.559. Squares, exactly 4. Hexagons, 3.722. The hexagon wins. It uses about 7% less wall than squares and about 18% less than triangles. That is a real result, and it is also almost nothing. Regular polygons are a vanishingly thin sliver of the shapes you are allowed to use. The cells do not have to be regular. They do not have to be polygons. Their walls can bulge out into arcs. They do not even have to be the same shape as each other. Ruling out all of that is the hard part, and it is where 2,000 years went. The hexagon's reputation is old. Around 36 BC, the Roman writer Varro wrote down that B cells have 6 sides, and reported what the geometers said, that among the shapes which fit together, the hexagon holds the most for the least. He was passing on a claim, he was not proving one. 3 centuries later, Pappus of Alexandria gave an argument, but it compared only the 3 regular tilings, which is exactly the calculation we just did together. Kepler took up the 3-dimensional side of the story in 1611. Darwin, in 1859, called the honeycomb absolutely perfect in economizing labour and wax, and explained it by natural selection rather than by geometry. The first real theorem arrived in 1943 from Laszlo Fejes Toth. He proved the hexagonal grid is optimal with one condition attached: every cell has to be convex. And that condition is doing an enormous amount of work. A convex cell cannot have a wall that curves inward, so no wall in the whole partition can curve outward either, because one cell's outward bulge is its neighbour's inward dent. Convexity quietly forces every cell to be a straight-sided polygon, which throws away the one competitor that should genuinely worry you. The isoperimetric inequality says a shape that bulges outward encloses more area for the same wall. Fejes Toth knew exactly what he had left undone. He wrote that removing the assumption would involve considerable difficulties. He was right for 56 years. So how do you prove something about infinitely many cells at once? You cannot simply add up perimeters and compare. Both sides of that comparison are infinite. The fix is to measure a density instead. Wall length per unit area taken over larger and larger disks. That number is finite, and for the regular hexagonal grid it is 1.861. The theorem says nothing can beat it. Hales's first move is to get rid of infinity altogether. Take a large square patch of the partition and glue its opposite edges together, right edge to left edge, top edge to bottom. What you get is a flat torus, a finite surface with no boundary at all, where the pattern repeats forever without you having to chase it. And on a torus, Euler's formula pins something down hard. Vertices minus edges plus faces equals 0. At least 3 walls meet at every corner. Put those two facts together, and the average cell has at most 6 sides. That is already suggestive. You cannot build a partition out of mostly 7- and 8-sided cells. The budget simply does not allow it. The second move is the heart of the paper. Hales assigns a score to each individual cell, built from that cell's area and its perimeter. He then proves that this score is never negative, and that it is 0 for exactly one shape, the regular hexagon of unit area. He calls it the hexagonal isoperimetric inequality. Once you have it, the theorem falls out. Add the scores over every cell on the torus, and the total tells you the partition can never use less wall than the honeycomb. Getting that inequality is where the real work lives. Cells are allowed to bulge, so their walls have to be cut back and replaced by straight chords before the estimate holds. And then you have to show the cutting never helped the competitor. The result in June 1999, about 20 pages. And unlike Hales's proof of the Kepler conjecture about stacking spheres, this one makes no significant use of computers. He described it, with some relief, as feeling like winning a lottery. Here is where I have to be careful. Hales proved a fact about geometry. He did not prove a fact about bees. Why real honeybees end up with hexagons is a biology question, and it is still being argued about. One camp says the bees barely do it at all. In this picture, a worker builds a roughly circular cell, and the wax, warmed to around 45 degrees Celsius, flows. Where 3 cells meet, surface tension pulls the junction into a 3-way meeting at 120 degrees. Exactly what a soap film does. And a network of 120-degree junctions is a hexagonal network. On this account, the bee supplies the heat and physics supplies the hexagon. The other camp says that is not what the measurements show. Comb built at temperatures too low for the wax to flow still comes out hexagonal, and a bee at work looks like it is constructing, not waiting. Then there is the evidence that settles at least one thing. Honeybees build two sizes of cell, smaller ones for workers, larger ones for drones. Where the two sizes meet, a hexagonal grid cannot simply carry on, so the bees do something else. They insert pairs of cells with 5 sides and 7 sides in the right places to stitch the two grids together. Michael Smith and colleagues measured more than 19,000 cells and found that the bees begin adjusting several rows before the transition arrives. Their conclusion was that these are architects, not automatons. So where does that leave us? The hexagonal grid is optimal. That is a theorem. Bees build hexagons. That is an observation. The arrow between those two statements is still being argued about. And anyone who tells you it is settled is telling you more than we actually know. Everything so far has been flat. Real comb is not. A honeycomb is 2 layers of cells back to back, and every cell is a hexagonal tube. The interesting question is how you close the far end of the tube. Bees close it with 3 identical rhombi, meeting at a single point on the cell's axis. In 1712, Giacomo Maraldi measured the angles of those rhombi and got 109 degrees 28 minutes. Colin Maclaurin derived that number from scratch in 1743. Here is why it is that number and not some other one. Slide the apex. As the point pushes out, the 3 rhombi grow, but the 6 side walls get shorter, and the volume of the cell does not change at all. So there is a trade, and somewhere there is a best trade. Plot the total surface area against how far the apex sticks out, and the curve has exactly one minimum. At that minimum, the rhombus angle is the inverse cosine of minus 1/3, 109.47 degrees, which is what Maraldi measured in a beehive 3 centuries ago. Within this family of shapes, the bees are not approximately right. They are exactly right. But the family is not the whole story. In 1964, Fejes Toth showed that closing a cell with 2 hexagons and 2 rhombi beats 3 rhombi. He was careful about the size of the gain, less than 0.35% of the area of an opening, and a smaller percentage still of the cell's actual wax. Tiny, but not 0. And the general 3-dimensional question is in worse shape than that. Lord Kelvin proposed an answer in 1887, and it stood for over a century. Then, in 1994, Dennis Weaire and Weaire-Phelan found a structure about 0.3% better. You can go and stand next to it. It is the wall of the Beijing Olympic Swimming Centre. And nobody has proved that theirs is the best one either. In 2 dimensions, we have a theorem. In 3, we still have a conjecture. Hexagons are everywhere in nature, and the theorem does not explain most of them. Basalt columns look like a giant honeycomb, but they come from lava cracking as it cools, and if you actually count the sides, the average is not 6. One survey of more than 3,000 columns put it close to 5.7. Graphene's hexagons come from the shape of carbon's bonding orbitals, nothing to do with least perimeter. Saturn's north pole has a hexagon in it, and that is a standing wave in a jet stream. Turtle shells are the one people get wrong most often. The central plates do tend toward hexagons, but the shell as a whole contains pentagons and irregular plates, because you cannot cover a curved surface with hexagons alone. Soap foam is the genuine relative. Films meet 3 at a time at 120 degrees, and Euler's formula then forces the average cell to have exactly 6 sides. Not approximately 6, exactly 6. Now watch carefully, because this is the easiest thing in the whole subject to say wrong. Start from random cells and let the boundaries relax. The average is already 6 on the very first frame, and it never moves. What changes is the spread. Cells stop being pentagons and heptagons and settle into hexagons. That is the honest version of nature's preference. Not that the average drifts to 6, but that anything minimizing boundary drifts toward the one shape the theorem singles out. So, the whole chain. A circle encloses the most area for the least perimeter, but equal circles cannot cover a surface. Among the arrangements that can, the regular hexagonal grid uses the least wall, and Thomas Hales proved that in 1999, without assuming the cells are convex, without assuming they are polygons, and without significant help from a computer. Here is what I would keep. The hexagonal grid is optimal, and that is proved. Bees build hexagons, and that is observed. Why bees build them is still argued about. The bee's 3-dimensional cell is exactly the best in its own family, and that family is not the best there is. And the 3-dimensional question in general is still open. 2,000 years to notice it, 20 pages to prove it. And 1 dimension up, we are still waiting.